In this screencast, I'm going to show how I used Google's GData protocol and the Google Web Toolkit to create a custom-built interface, which is the website that will interact with Google Calendars. This is what Google Calendar's default view will look like if you use the normal Google Calendar setup. From here you can see there's a few events already entered. There's things here, so the ones that apply to sporting events I have prefixed with 2 dots at the beginning, as you can see just there. That's kind of the delimiter so that we can separate sporting events from what is generally kept in the calendar otherwise. So this is what the normal view looks like, and we can see here, if I click on this event, which is a sporting event, it has a title with the delimiter. It has a start time and an end time. The end time is just put in as default, which will be an hour later than what the start time is. And this is where the main other data is stored. It's kept in the description field, and it's in JSON format. So the custom interface puts this into here, and it can separate all the different events. So that's basically what the default view looks like and how it's stored in Google Calendars. So this is what the custom interface looks like. We can add an event, we can log into our account. So if I log in there, it says I've logged in, and then it automatically pulls down the data from Google Calendars, and because it uses the delimiter, it will only pull in the sports events and not the other information from the calendar. So if I click the TV details on a thing, it'll read the JSON data, and it'll display what channel I have put in that this game is playing on and what time. And so I can click it on another one, and it displays it again in the little dialog box. I can go add an event, and I'll get this little panel here. So I can type in, say, Leinster, and then with the date you get this little drop down box, and you can select a date, and you can change the time to whatever you want. You can select the sport type, so I'll set it as Gaelic, and I don't know what a Gaelic competition is, so I'll just put in comp. Home team, say Dublin versus Cork. TV channel RTE, and start time at, say, 7 PM. You can enter the time in any type of format since they're just strings. Here again, maybe it's been shown on, say, network 2 at, say, 7:30 PM. So I can do that, and then I can click on create. You can also see here there's required fields with the star beside them. You must enter a title and a date. That's Google specification, so if they're not entered, it'll display an error message to the user. So I click create, and that refreshes it, and this is the new event then added in down here. So if I click on TV details, it displays them there, and all of this data then is pulled in from the description field, and it's extracted from a JSON format. So I can click on edit then as well. And this will bring up this little panel where you can edit the data. Unfortunately, I could not get the update button to work. It gives error messages, but I think I might know why that is, and I'll talk about that later on when I go into talking about the code more. So that's basically what the website does. We can add events, we can pull the data down from Google Calendars. There is a function to edit, but as I said, there's a small problem with actually applying the update. We can refresh the data, but that button shouldn't really be needed. It's just in case it's there. And the logout button then will clear the page and tell the user that they've been logged out. So now I'll go and talk about some of the code and go through the coding in Eclipse. So this is the basic HTML page that most of the data is displayed on. It's basically just a table, as you can see here. These are the fields, or the rows within each table are basically just containers, and the GWT code is pushed into the containers from the main Java class. It's worth noting here that Google will throw errors if you do not have an image on your source page. So this is why an image has to be here. It seems more like a bug than not. It's just without an image, basically GData will not work. So that's why that image has to be there. There are two main Java classes in this. There's the sports data JSON class, which basically converts fields into a JSON format and allows them then to be put into the description field. And then the main class, which controls most of the functions, is called myCalendar.java. When you're looking at it first, it looks quite big and bulky, but I've tried to keep it simple by putting descriptions on basically everything. And here basically these are just public static final methods, which are basically just helpers, so it keeps things less confusing later on. Other variables here are an array list to hold entries, and this creates a string from an entry so that we can see if an entry has been entered before, and not to display it twice on the website. Here we have, these are the root panels. These will get the containers from the HTML page so that they're just easier to access. They're used quite regularly. These are panels which display most of the data. Then we have widgets which are put on basically all of the panels. So we've all of these here. These are for basically for the TV coverage, add event panels. So basically then they're all just helpers at the start. Now the main code, when the page initially loads, the onModule load method is called. So this basically just sets up our page at the beginning. First we have set the visibility of the close button. This is used for when the user clicks to add a panel from here. This close button right here will be hidden unless the panel is actually shown. So that's what this bit of code is doing. So here we initialize the events flex table. So the flex table is this table here, and we initialize that in this method here. So that is here where we initialize. So this basically just sets up the headings and sets the size of the table, and it applies the format from the CSS table. So this loads the GData package. This is extremely important to load. Basically most of the code that accesses Google Calendars will not function if this package is not loaded at the beginning. So this is the load GData method. It just checks if the calendar is loaded, and if it's not, it will load it and it will display a message to the user. So next we have the create handler events. This basically creates all the on-click events for the buttons. these are all there. It's just easier to keep them in one method rather than creating them at random points whenever the buttons are created throughout the code, so that method was fairly handy to keep them there. Next we have add initial widgets to panels. This method basically just sets up how the page will look at the beginning and things that need to be initialized. So the type list box, the login container, it'll add in the login, logout and refresh buttons. It adds in the other buttons for adding an event and closing the add event box, the message label container and display an event. So that's basically just the flex table. I've created a few helper methods which help throughout the project. The entry string, this creates a string from an entry so that we know not to add the same event twice. There's the toggle close button, which is the close button on when you go to add an event. This makes the close button visible or invisible. This clears all the text boxes in the add event panel, so when they click add event, all the text boxes are as if nothing was entered. Then we have display the message label display. This uses, it'll change the color depending on if they enter success or failure, or if they enter clear, it will clear the message of everything in it. So that's just makes message displaying a lot easier. One of the major features is getting all the sporting events and displaying them to the user. So this method gets a calendar service, it'll get the feeds URI, and then if it's successful it will call this method add event to an event flex table. So when it does that, for every result in the table, it first checks for the delimiter, so it'll only display sporting events. It will get the entry string and add it to an entry string table, so this is so we don't add duplicates. So it will then extract the data from it, from the entry. So it'll extract the JSON data here, which uses the JSON class. And then once it has that information, it will add it to the flex table, and it'll add it'll add an edit button so that it'll be unique for each event that's added. It will also add down here, it will add the TV details button, so when they click on that it'll display the TV coverage details, and they also just have handlers for closing the dialog boxes as well. The next major feature is when a user goes to create an event. As always, we get our calendar service and our events URI. There's a method here, get events from text boxes. This method basically gets all the values from the text boxes, which are these boxes right here. This method gets those values, and if the title or date is null, as they are required by Google, it'll return null. So if null is returned, the user will get an error displayed to them. Otherwise, we will take that entry which is created from the values and we will insert it into Google Calendar. So on failure, the user will get a message. If it's successful, it'll be inserted and the flex table will be refreshed with the new data. Very quickly, I believe the update does not work, as the fields I used for entering the edit data are the same fields I use when adding an event. So when I added items in, I put values into those text boxes, which was fine, but then I also, while trying to be efficient, I used the same get values from text boxes method, which created new instances of variables that were already there. So I believe that might be one of the reasons why my update method does not work, as it's adding new instances to the entry instead of just updating what was already there.